Just waiting to see if it starts. All right, I think we're finally live. Okay, awesome. Hey, Randy, how are you? Get a few more minutes for other folks to join. Today we are going to be talking about ancestors and the importance of working with them in your practice, and then just a few ways that you can incorporate ancestor work in your everyday, not just your everyday life, but also in your witchy life. Hey, Paula, good to see you. So let's get started. So we're going to talk, so ancestors, basically, when we think about ancestors, what we're thinking about, most people think about grandma, grandpa, you know, all of that. But those are not the ancestors that we're talking about when we're talking about actually working with ancestors. So the ancestors that we're talking about then are going to be probably ancestors that you've never met. They're going to be quite a few generations behind you. So they're going to be ancestors that maybe even your grandparents haven't met. And there's a reason for that. The primary reason for that is because ancestors who have recently transitioned, and recently, I'm not talking about last year, I'm talking about last century, right? Recently transitioned. They may not be in a position yet that they're ready to begin working with you. They may be hanging out, but they are not in a place yet where they have resolved maybe their own issues so that they're clear and they're well enough to be able to provide you guidance and things to that sort. So it's very important when we start working with our ancestors that we look to work with not ancient, but older ancestors, not our recent ancestors, the ones who maybe we remember names and we know stories about their lives. So we want to look really to the past because those have a higher chance of being well and being able to actually help us without having their own personal biases and unresolved issues thrown into the mix. I hope that makes sense. So when we start looking at ancestors, we actually have quite a few different lineages of ancestors between us, right? You're going to have your parents' ancestors. So you got mom's lineage and you got dad's lineage. That's two lineages. But you're also going to have your spiritual lineage, which is basically, think about your past lives. Those are your ancestors from yourself. So that's a lineage that you can call on as well to be able to do work. If there's one of your past lives that perhaps has a knowledge onto something that you're working with now, you can ask for that knowledge, not all the other issues that go along with it, obviously, but you can ask to tap into that knowledge that existed before to incorporate that into your life. But that's more advanced work. So I would say if you've never worked with ancestors, stick with family ancestors first because those are going to be the easiest ones for you to work with. So the first thing you want to do when you're starting to work with your ancestors is you want to create a sacred space for them, a little ancestor altar or an ancestor shelf or a little place in your home that reminds you of them and that gives them a place to be. So this is a place where you can then go to connect with them there. So generally what I recommend when you do that, you want to make sure you have a white cloth, and the shelf can be like a tiny little shelf. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant to get started. As you work with them, then your ancestor altar may grow, but just to start off, you just need a tiny little space. So you want to have everything that goes on there, you want to have it to be light colors. So you want whites or you want like really soft yellows, and you don't want deep dark colors that are going to be vibrant because that is those colors are going to elicit a lot of energy. And we do not, since you have this ancestor altar, it is dedicated to all of your ancestors, the ones that are well and the ones that are not. There's really no way to differentiate because they are all in your lineage. So when you create an ancestor altar, you're creating one for your entire lineage, those that are well and those that maybe have not resolved all of their issues. So it's important to keep everything we put on there nice and neutral and calm, not to elicit those that have unresolved issues to come in and try to resolve their own issues through your life or something to that effect. So once you you set up your ancestor altar, you have your white cloth. You want to have a white candle there for them. What I do every time I come up to connect with them, I turn on that candle. And that candle for me signifies that I'm there and that they're there. So now once I turn that on, it's almost immediate. I can feel the energy rushing into that altar because it's almost like a call. I'm lighting that candle to let them know, hey, I need to talk to you. And then they come in rushing. In the beginning, you may not get that, but as you do it and you repeat it and your ancestors start to recognize that your candle is your way to communicate with them every single time you light it, then that's going to work a little bit better. You can add any kind of white or clear crystals. Clear quartz works really well. Selenite is fantastic. I have selenite on my altars at home. Selenite is an energy mover, and it's going to really facilitate carrying your energy up to them so that they can hear you better, facilitate that communication signal that you have with them. Another thing you may want to include there is just maybe little things that connect you to your ancestors. So if you have, your great aunt's necklace, or maybe your mom's favorite chalice, or maybe, dad's favorite pipe or granddad's favorite pipe, like anything that you have that is a cherished item that connects you to your ancestors, you can put that on there. If you don't have anything like that, then you can choose something that's going to be representative of them. So, and because you don't know what's going to be representative of ancestors you did not know, you can connect through your recent ancestors, but just know that you are not working with these recent ancestors. They act as your connection to get into that. So that's important. It's an important little distinction for you to know. So let's say grandpa was really fond of sailing, right? He's got a boat and everything. You may get a little compass to go on the on your ancestor altar. Or maybe you figure out that, grandma used to love to bake. She was a huge baker. So you can go and get a little spatula, like a little one like this, to put on your ancestor altar to signify her energy coming in. And when that energy comes in, that's the bridge that you need that's going to connect you to your lineage that has gone before you. I hope that makes sense. So it's really important to understand that your recent ancestors may not necessarily be the ones you're going to be working with because they're not ready for you to work with, but they can act as a bridge to your older ancestors who are ready for you to work with. So once you have that set up, you have your candle, you have your item that's going to remind you of your ancestors. You can even put a picture there if that works for you, and your white tablecloth. That's pretty much set up. So anytime you want to connect with them, you can step up and you can, light your candle, sit down in front of it, and just talk to them as if you were talking to them, sitting across the dinner table, or talking to your best friend and say, hey, this is how my day went today. This is what's going on in my life. Or if you want something from them, you want to say, hey, can you please help me out with this? It's really important when you start building a relationship with your ancestors that you just don't go to them when you need something, because then you become that annoying moochy friend, right? The friend who never calls you unless they need something from you. And so what you're looking to build is a true relationship. So something good happens in your life, go over there, give thanks, because all the skills that you have in order to make that good thing happen in your life came from them. Everything we have came from them. So when something good happens for you, we need to go back to them and say thank you. They need to share in that joy that we just received because they're partially responsible for it. So you make sure that you connect with them when you need something and also when you don't need something, just to say thanks. What I do for my ancestor altar is I put a little white tea light candle to them with a little bit of ancestor oil on it every single new moon. Sorry, there's an ambulance going on in the background here. This is why you're hearing the weird noises. Every new moon, I put a little candle to signify just to give thanks to them and say, hey, thank you for being in my life. And so once you get that started, then you can add other things later. You can add possibly some incense. You can add flowers. A lot of people like to put fresh flowers. The important thing is that make sure that your ancestor altar can be as high maintenance or as low maintenance as you want. But if you promise something, if you say, hey, I'm going to put fresh flowers for you here every week, then you better be putting fresh flowers every single week because you promised it, right? So I always say under promise and over deliver. So if you want to bring, let's say you want to bring them flowers every week, that's your intention, but that may not necessarily be what ends up happening. Don't promise you're going to do that. Just bring the flowers in every week and say, here's flowers for you to give thanks and give gratitude. So that if you don't show up one week, it's not like you are basically backing out of a promise that you made. So it's really important to understand that. So if you create a very high maintenance altar, what happens is you have to maintain it. You have to then do all of the things that you said you were going to do in order to keep that relationship going. Another thing you can add to your ancestor altar is a skull. I have 2 skulls on my ancestor altar. I have a clear quartz and I also have a smoky quartz. And the smoky quartz is basically just to ground and protect any ancestors that maybe are not well and maybe have whatever their energy is trying to spill over into my life. That smoky quartz is just going to take that and it's going to ground that energy so it doesn't affect me directly, and it also gives them some relief. And then the other one I have is a clear quartz, which is really a big symbol of how I connect with my well ancestors. You can add that. That's completely optional. It is not required to add that. And then the other thing you can do is during the holidays, you can add special meals as offerings. So let's say your grandma always made, these specific cookies at Christmas. So in order to honor her, maybe you go and you use her recipe and you make the cookies, and then you bring a little plate with a cookie on it for her and say, here, I'm thinking about you. I just made these cookies. Here, share in my joy that you gave me from this recipe. And then you let it sit normally overnight. I normally try to do it 24, maybe 48 hours, depending on what you put on there. You do not want things to go sketchy when it's on your ancestor altar. You do not want it to start looking like, I don't want to touch that. You want to make sure that it's there long enough for them to enjoy it, but you remove it before it starts, attracting things and causing problems. So then when you pull that off of your ancestor altar, you take the offering that you gave and you give it back to nature. I normally like to go I live out in the country, so for me it's easy to kind of just go out into the woods and put it I put it at the base of a tree. So if you don't have woods where you live, if you have a vacant lot, you can leave it there. Animals will come and get it. If you have like a park close to you, I would be careful with the park, because if you have a lot of food you're putting there, then that may not necessarily be a good thing. You want to go somewhere where there's a lot of nature, animals that comes through, because this is how they're going to take that away. And another thing is, if you are for me, for example, I worry about animals, right? So I am not going to give an offering that has a lot of things that animals can't eat. So if my grandparents really love chocolate, then what I may end up doing is I may end up saying, okay, here's a piece of chocolate for you. I put it there. And then once that chocolate is done, I'll dissolve it into some water. You can just nuke it in the microwave until it's liquid. You dissolve it into some water, and then you go out somewhere, maybe next to a river or something, and you toss it in. That way you're not risking that wildlife is going to get any kind of toxicity from that chocolate. But it's kind of up to you, whatever feels right to you. So let's say you have Christmas coming up, you do that maybe on the birth of your mom's birthday or your dad's birthday, or special holidays that are traditionally important to you and your family. So in my family, I have a very big Italian family. So for us, important holidays were generally Christmas. Christmas was huge in my family. New Year's is huge in my family. So there's another holiday that we celebrate a lot, and we would make special meals. And so I partake with my ancestors in that. If you decide that you want to celebrate Samhain with your ancestors, if you go to the ravenmoonlight.com website for Raven Moonlight Botanicals, I posted a ceremony there that you can use. It's called the Ancestral Supper, which it's kind of my take on the Dumb Supper, which is a horrible name for it. It's a traditional supper where you invite spirits to dine with you in witchcraft. So we're kind of modified it a little bit, and we're calling it an ancestral supper. But it's where you invite your ancestors to have a meal with you. And once you do that, you take those offerings and let it sit overnight, and you take the offerings and you put it outside so that nature can get to it. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. So if you're interested in incorporating them into your ancestral supper for Samhain, there is a ceremony out there that you can go ahead and get, and that will be pretty easy. It's very easy to follow. It's not difficult. But there's a lot of other things that you can do. For example, most ancestors really like a lot of floral incenses. Normally, anything that smells good, that lifts the mood, are going to be good things for you to include in your ancestor altar. An incense can be an offering all in itself. So you have a brand new incense that you got. What you do is you say, you know what, before I enjoy this incense, I'm going to open this box and I'm going to give the first stick or cone or little sprinkle to my ancestors, and you light it on the ancestor altar. You tell them, hey, I just bought this incense. I'm giving it to, you're getting the first pick of it. Thank you for being in my life. And boom, there you go. And that's a nice offering, a nice way to acknowledge them on a daily basis. So, and it's important that you just don't go to them during holidays or when you want something, stop in maybe once a month. If you can, once a week would be great, but once a week, not a lot of people can't do that, but at least once a month, neither the full moon or the new moon. I prefer the new moon, but full moon works just fine. And then step in there and say, hey, I acknowledge you. Thank you for being in my life. Give thanks, give gratitude. And then that's going to start building that relationship with your ancestors. Just remember that everything that you are today, your body, your opportunity to live in this time, to be able to experience all of the things that you're experiencing, comes from your ancestors. They are all of their efforts through the generations led to you and to who you are today and to the life that you live today. So you are an extension of them, and you literally have pieces of them within your body. So it's really important to acknowledge that they are a very, very important part of our lives, not just on a yearly basis, but monthly, weekly, semi-weekly, something to that effect. I'm going to keep talking, but I want to ask, does anybody have any questions about ancestors? And does everybody have maybe already have an ancestral practice that you want to share something about it, something that works for you? And like I said, I'm going to keep talking because I don't like dead space. And so tomorrow we're going to have our live sale, and in the live sale I'm going to have an ancestor altar is going to be one of the main pieces that I'm going to display, and so you can see what's included in the ancestor altar, and you can decide whether or not that's something that you want to have for yourself or not. So tune in tomorrow for that. There's also going to be some skulls. I got some new ones when I went shopping last week at our wholesaler, some really cool ones, so I'm going to have those out there. So lots of goodies tomorrow to help you to honor your ancestors. A good way to honor them also is to always give them light. This is one of the things that my grandfather, who was a spiritualist, he used to say this all the time. All spirits need light, and so offering them a candle is a great offering, because you are literally offering them some light to enhance their light, to add to their light, to make them do better. Let's see, would you recommend against a bloodstone skull on your ancestor altar? I would not start with a bloodstone skull. Bloodstone is going to have that really heavy energy until you know exactly which ancestors you're working with. I would not start with something like that. I would go with something a little bit lighter. And then it may be that over time, as you get to know them, you work into that. But I would definitely not start with a bloodstone skull. That would be a little heavy, I think. Does that answer your question? Hopefully it does. Anyway, so you can offer them light as part of offering your offering that you give to them every single month. And it doesn't really matter the size of the candle. You can offer them a tiny little tea light, or you can offer them a giant big pillar. The thing with a giant big pillar is if you're giving it as an offering, you want to make sure that you let it burn all the way down. So a big pillar may be burning over, a period of like 7 days or so. So you don't want to do that if you're not comfortable letting it burn. Good, Paul, I'm glad. If you not comfortable letting it burn all the way down over a period of 7 days. So you want to make sure that you give something that you can feel comfortable and safe in giving to them. but it's something, when you're offering something, you want to make sure that you let it burn all the way down. Other things you can give to them are herbs. If you go out and maybe purchase something, you see something at a market or at a little shop that reminds you of your ancestors, a little trinket, you can also purchase that for them and then come back and say, hey, I thought about you guys when I was out. I saw this, it really called to me, and I'm putting it here for you. So there's a lot of different ways to acknowledge them. And, you know, when you offer something like that, you offer them to be part of your life. You're letting them know that, hey, I was out in my everyday life and I saw this and I thought of you, which means you are with me every step that I take every single day. So it's a really meaningful offering. Paula says, I offer a bottle cap candle each morning. It burns about 30 minutes. Oh, I don't think I've ever seen a bottle cap candle. Is that actually a candle that's made in a little bottle cap? I mean, I'm assuming it is, hence the name bottle cap candle, but those things got to be like really, really tiny. I don't know. I've never seen one of those before. The most important thing when you are giving an offering to your ancestors is to make sure that it comes from the heart. It shouldn't be an offering out of obligation, like, oh, I got to give my candle now this month because it's at that time of the month. Don't do that. If you're not comfortable doing that at that, you know, in the moon phase, and you're saying, I'm not going to do a candle this month, then don't do it that month. Do it next month. But what I'm saying is that you want to make sure that you connect with them on a regular basis, not just like once a year. If you're truly interested in building a relationship with them and having them be a part of your everyday life. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps you guys to get started with your Ancestor Altar practice. And, you know, and as you move forward in your practice, you're going to start realizing, you know, these things really work for me. These things really don't work for me very well. And you're going to be able to start catering each one of those things to whatever it is that works for you and what doesn't work. And then you'll also notice the things that your ancestors like and the things that they don't like. One thing that all ancestors like is any kind of booze, any alcohol they like, even if they didn't drink alcohol in their everyday life. Alcohol, there's a property within alcohol that really connects to the higher levels of vibration, especially because when you take it, you become inebriated, and that kind of gets you to a place where you see things, different things that maybe normally you wouldn't see when you were in that. It is a mind-altering drug, maybe not as strong as, you know, other drugs, but it is kind of in that realm. So we want to make sure that when you give something like that to them, it's always going to be welcome. So you can do it in a little shot glass. You can just do a little shot of, my ancestors always get rum. I always try to give a clear color alcohol if I can, but something that's actually drinkable. Like, don't put Everclear there. I mean, who drinks a lot of Everclear? Not a lot of people do that. So I normally put a little bit of alcohol, whatever it is that I'm drinking, and I give it to them. So if I'm drinking wine, they get a glass of wine. If I'm drinking champagne, they get a glass of champagne. If I drink vodka, they get a glass of vodka. So on and so forth, to make sure that whatever it is that you're having, you're sharing with them. It's almost like you're sitting down and having a drink with them. You have yours and you give them theirs. And that's a really nice way to honor them as well. So, like I said, I hope that this helped. Sorry, I kind of made like I was going to close and then I started talking again. I apologize for that. But I hope that this helps. And I hope that you all have a fantastic Samhain if I don't see you guys tomorrow at the live. There's going to be a lot of things. If you live locally, you can get them just in time to have it set up for your Ancestor Altar for Samhain. If you live far away, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you purchase whatever you're going to purchase tomorrow, so I can try to get it out to you on Wednesday, so you can hopefully receive it by Sunday. So it's all a matter of when you place that order. So if you don't give me 3 days, I cannot guarantee you that the post office is going to... Sorry, something happens there that it paused, like my phone started ringing or something. Anyway, so I can't guarantee you that I'm going to get it to you in time if you don't give me some shipping time. So if you have any questions, just private message me either here or on our Facebook page or at the Wild Community. And I hope that everyone has a fantastic week. And I hope I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right? Take care. Bye-bye.